Well, a very good morning and many thanks for staying with us right here on NTV Uganda. My name is Romeo Busiku. I come to you yet again with another pertinent conversation. Prevention and responses to gender-based violence against persons with disabilities in Uganda. Here, how have they been grappling under the COVID-19 pandemic? What are some of those challenges and what are the responses or recommendations that we have bathed during this COVID-19 pandemic to ensure that we curtail these challenges that have befallen people living with disabilities in the COVID-19 era and beyond? I do have Honorable Helen Asamo Grace. She is the Minister of State for Disability Affairs. She's not alone. We also do have a member from the National Union of Disabled Persons of Uganda, and that is none other than that is Mr. Tony Aina. He is the Program Officer at this organization. Many thanks, gentlemen and lady, for joining us right here on NTV Uganda.
Thank you so much, Mr. Romeo.
Indeed. All right, I'm going to kick off with Tony Aina, the Program Officer at the National Union of Disabled Persons of Uganda, simply to let us know what NUDIPU is and what their objectives are. Go ahead, Mr. Aina.
Thank you so much, Mr. Romeo, for the opportunity. As it has been stated, my name is Tony Aina, Program Officer for National Union of Persons with Disability of Uganda. NUDIPU is a non-for-profit organization that brings together persons with disability in Uganda, and it was formed in the year 1987.
If that face mask is making you uncomfortable, you can remove it for purposes of audibility for the viewer.
Okay, I've been excused, so viewers, I think I won't be misunderstood. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yes, National Union of Persons with Disability of Uganda, NUDIPU, is an umbrella organization that brings together persons with disability in Uganda, and it was formed in the year 1987 to advocate for improvement of life of persons with disability in Uganda. And as I speak now, it is a unifying voice for persons with disability in Uganda to advocate for their fundamental rights, largely to enable them get equal opportunity goods and services being provided either by private sector or public sector, that is to say government. Its membership are both at the district and at the district level, the members, we call them District Union of Persons with Disability.
I see.
These are group which are formed in various districts in this country. If I'm to give you some few examples, like in Karamoja, we have Kotido District Union of Persons with Disability, Moroto District Union of Persons with Disability, Barara, and the like. It brings together various associations of persons with disability in Uganda. For example, if I'm to cite a few now, we have Uganda National Association of the Blind, Uganda National Association of the Deaf,
Indeed, Tony.
National Union of Women, National Union of Women with Disability, no WUDU, National Union of Women with Disabilities.
Right there.
Those are the examples. And this is an organization with a very focused vision to ensure a just and a fair society where persons with disability live in a dignified and prosperous life.
So largely you've been working in close proximity with persons with disabilities. What are some of those challenges that have befallen this vulnerable group during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Romeo, if I'm to digest that one in totality, it may consume a lot of time, but I will summarize that this way.
Indeed.
There are two challenges coming and facing persons with disability during this pandemic. One of the challenges which is more serious than the pandemic is the historical challenges of negative attitude. Historically, before even in the COVID-19, most persons with disability were taken for granted. What do I mean? The plight and the need of persons with disability in most African settings are understood largely from traditional dimension. And in the traditional dimension, there's a school of thought which guide them there. Normally, they call them charity model, where they think persons with disabilities who rely on handouts, they should rely on sympathy and the like. And during this pandemic, they have faced several challenges because they suffer from triple or multiple discrimination.
Indeed.
First of all, for example, if I'm to cite, if you are a person with disability and you're a lady, First of all, you are discriminated because you are a woman. Secondly, you are discriminated because you are disabled. Thirdly, maybe you are discriminated because you are illiterate. Fourthly, you are discriminated, maybe you are in the village. Fifth, you may be discriminated because you are poor. So during this pandemic, some of them did not get necessary services. For example, maybe a person with a hearing impairment. Most messages during COVID-19 period initially were not reaching them well. They were not knowing exactly what does it take for me to take care of myself. What should I do? Where should I go in case of this kind of problem? And how ready are the service provider in terms of knowledge and skills to support me in case I need a COVID-19 related kind of support. And it is even worse if it comes to a person with a intellectual or mental impairment.
Indeed.
These are category of people who can hardly, majority of them can hardly tell what is going around. And in most cases, they are not even protected. You can hardly get a person with intellectual impairment maybe putting on a face mask. Why? Because the way to access them through the structure or maybe through the cadres or the team which were fighting COVID-19 were not clear or not there at all. Now, they are left isolated and they are left alone. This situation of negligence makes them susceptible to COVID-19 pandemic, to GBV, in the sense that you are aware that COVID-19 brought everyone under the same roof. The survivor of GBV and the perpetrator were more or less living under the same roof.
Indeed.
And literature, several scholarly literature about GBV do concur with me that a greater percentage of perpetrators of GBV live within a very close environment with the survivor. Therefore, it means these kind of persons might have faced this vice of GBV multiple times, and due to limited knowledge and the referral pathway and the like, they may not report this kind of thing. And in some community, may take it as a normal thing. After all, you are disabled. You know, I told you that most people still understand persons with disability through charity model. I see. They think that these people also, they can wait. You know, those days, when you apply for a job, there were some people whose name were put in the waiting list. While others have already been contacted and maybe they are in the progression, but for you are in the waiting list. I hear you. So some development intervention accidentally or deliberately put a number of persons with disability in the waiting list of development. Yet at the moment, you know that the global commitment is that no one should be left behind. In whichever intervention you are going to make, you have to look at it from a global perspective. Which direction are people taking?
Tony, yes, Tony Ayina, he is the program officer at NUDIPU, the National Union of Persons, of Disabled Persons of Uganda. And of course, he has given us a brief preamble into this main conversation. Let's also bring in the Minister of State for Disability Affairs, Helen Grace Asamo. Very good morning once again, Helen Grace Asamo. Let's talk about gender-based violence in that regard. What are some of the push factors behind the skyrocketing numbers of gender-based violence within our country? How many are being affected as far as PWDs are concerned?
Okay, good morning. I want to greet all the viewers, and I want to thank you, Remeo, for this invitation and NUDIPU for bringing me in. And I want to ask that since there are soaps recognized here, I will remove my mask. And I'm very conscious about COVID-19.
Indeed, Honorable.
So I want to thank you so much. And let me first allow me to define that GBV occurs in different forms. And you realize that we have both emotional, physical, and whatever. So these kind of GBV issues come about. And I want to tell you that GBV, according to the government report, was something that, I don't know, am I?
Yes, go ahead. Come on.
According to the government report, it happened a lot during the COVID time. And you will allow me give you some statistics. Go ahead. In those statistics, I might not single out to say these are disabled people because they live in the same community. And we recognize that they could have they could have had a higher rate because of the nature of their disability described by Tony.
You can start by giving us aggregations of the number of the PWDs within the country.
So I will first start by giving you the report on GBV, people who got GBV challenges.
Yes.
In the Ugandan police report, January to June, that's the time we had this COVID, a total of 16,242 cases of gender-based violence were reported. These were reported, not the ones which are not reported. And you find that against the children, we also reported to police 8,085 were domestic violence in nature, 5,600 were defilements, 749 were rape, and 223 aggravated domestic violence leading to deaths.
I see.
Where some people were like fighting. But you asked me what could be the challenges of GBV.
The push factors behind the skyrocketing GBV cases.
Of course, you know, when COVID-19 occurred, we were all in one block. So you realize that as a woman with disability, maybe this person was not able to go and do work, was not able to bring in man on food. You're asking Mr. X, you say, Romeo, I don't have this, the best thing you're going to do for me. Either you're going to keep quiet, or you are not going to answer me anything that would attack me. Then it is very easy to do rape on a person with intellectual disability. Because this person does not even react. It is there. She's there, a disabled person. So it is true that many disabled people could have got the challenges in this area. The only challenge I know, as government has put in laws, but the way these people are able to access justice is still a challenge. Because you have to report, you have to tell people who raped you, and imagine somebody is intellectually disabled, somebody is blind. How does this person be able to make a report? But I think for government of Uganda, government has tried to come up with laws that are looking at all people in Uganda as equal. And I will start with the Constitution of Uganda to give just a brief. That the Constitution provides for equality before the law, and protection of fundamental and other human rights. And all these rights are also affecting people with disabilities. We have policies. We have the Uganda gender policy. It recognizes issues of gender-based violence. We have the national policy on elimination of gender-based violence in Uganda. And that policy came because of those actions that were discovered in society against gender-based violence. And gender is not only women, gender-based violence, not only women. In fact, the cases of men of recent have increased. The men are suffering more than the women.
The women are battering them.
Women are battering them. Women are running away with the children. So there's a lot of things that's happening in society. We have the Penal Code Act. It also recognizes issues of gender-based violence. We have the Domestic Violence Act itself of 2010, which is trying to address the issues of gender-based violence. Then the prevention of trafficking in persons. As you realize of recent, you see so many children from Karamoja field on the road there, and these children do not belong to anybody. And you can find that gender-based violence can occur in those streets and be able to support these children. So the Evidence Act also, which caters for now the people who have a hearing impairment. This one makes sure that people are able to speak about their issues. But I think the challenge we have, most of these laws have not yet been put in use. And many people do not know about them. So I think as government, there's a plan. We have some sheltered homes. I know they are managed majorly by the NGOs, but at least people are taken there to be able to be supported, like Action Aid. I think you have WarNet. They are trying to see how they can work with government to try to reduce on gender-based violence. But I want to recognize the work of NUDIPU, who are now looking at the gender-based violence as per people with disabilities, which is very critical. But because of the nature of the disability, you find that it is double-edged. First of all, as a disabled yourself, your attitude towards people is a challenge already. So it affects your emotional ability. So at the end of the day, when we talk about gender-based abuse of gender-based violence, people take advantage of these young women or even old women. Somebody comes and tells you, under COVID time, I think I can buy for you a kilo of kawunga. You might think you are getting good luck, but somebody is just taking advantage of you. So I think for me, the issue of gender-based violence among people with disabilities is a very new concept. And it's coming up with something that we find challenges, especially where people were put under one roof. Because we have had cases of even relatives are the ones who are abusing these people. Yeah.
All right, that is Honorable Helen Grace Samo, the Minister of State for Disability Affairs. We also do have Tony Ayina, a program officer with NUDIPU. NUDIPU has largely been in close proximity with these people grappling with various disabilities under this COVID-19 pandemic. I've gotten so many reports that have been streaming in right here on NTV Uganda of sexual abuse that is being meted out on persons with disabilities. The Uganda National Association for the Deaf, it has a school, but many of the young girls within that school were being abused by the administrators themselves. The people who are supposed to actually be helping them were actually abusing them, the school administrators. You have disabled young children who have fallen pregnant during this pandemic, and some of whom have tried to even seek medical services within the health centers, but then the attitudinal challenges coming in from the health workers have actually dampened their resolve to receive the help that they were looking for. Someone who is disabled will go to a health center, go to the reception, talk to a health worker, and then they'll give them this attitude of, oh, you're also engaging in unscrupulous sexual activities. You also need contraception. Like, this person is not a human being. Talk to us about those challenges and so forth when it comes to access to medical services, contraception, and so forth.
Okay, thank you so much, Romeo. Access to services, but not only limited to medical one, is a very big challenge to persons with disability. This one is stemming from historical and institutional arrangement, which were largely guided by different philosophy and school of thought. For example, you find that up to now there are still modern structures, physical in form of a physical infrastructure, which are not accessible to maybe a wheelchair user. Now, medically speaking, if I were to do a simple random sampling, even within Kampala City, to see maybe to analyze this, the maternity ward of many medical facilities, you will agree with me that most, maybe for example, the beds, the delivery beds are not accessible to a mother, most mothers with disability. And in most cases, there is no even clear budget line or commitment to bring at least one. This one normally scare persons with disability to come. Some persons with disability, especially mothers who are expectant, to come and get better medical services from the health facility. And they may at times be forced to resort to another option, which is maybe traditional birth attendant and the like, which is not recommended at all.
It's very
but
dangerous.
Since you are limited with choice, you know, for you to say that you are developed, you have to have a series of choices. But if you have only one choice, then you are highly constrained and you will lack a lot of things. Leave alone that. When it comes to issue of visibility of a health facility, there are some persons who have a visual impairment. What they read is what we call large print. But the way the signage and our health facilities organized alone can scare somebody. But bigger than that, the biggest enemy in the house is the negative attitude.
From the health workers.
Across, not only even
the community
workers.
members.
When you read the non-verbal body language of somebody, even in the medical sector, you will agree that there's a lot of work to be done by everybody. Facial twisting, judgmental. You may find somebody in the health facility, a medical worker is passing and asking, are you also sick? Do you also need help? Maybe if you are a pregnant mother, others may go extra mile to ask, well, why did you also get pregnant?
Jesus.
As if there's a school for pregnancy where you have to go and graduate and become qualified to
I hear
pregnant.
you, Tony. Very callous.
So these are some of the work which we need to do. Leave alone that. When it comes to maybe the services like maybe physiotherapy kind of arrangement, maybe this is a person who has a mild kind of disability. Because most of the research says that when a form of impairment is managed well at the initial stage, the magnitude may be controlled. Let us assume you have a child who has some kind of impairment and it needs some basic medical attention. You find that there are very few specialists who are knowledgeable about disability, how to handle, than the traditional way. That is why there are some people in the community, they think persons with disability, you know, there are some people who used to think that there should have been a separate facility for persons with disability. That's why you saw those days there were separate schools for persons with disability. But now we are saying, no, there's need for us to mainstream, to have a one-stop institution where if you come, you already know that I'm now in a hospital, and I will be able to get all sorts of services. For example, it's more severe when it comes to the use of GBV. Borrowing analogy from the GBV referral pathway, when a survivor of a GBV is maybe referred to a health facility by police.
Yes, Tony.
And this is a person who is maybe having a kind of disability, such as maybe being deaf, or maybe being dumb, or maybe having intellectual impairment. This is a person who will never be attended to easily. Because, first of all, a health worker has not been trained on sign language.
I hear you.
Sign language, a health worker has not been trained on, and as such, they don't even go extra mile to seek maybe other services, maybe consult to brainstorm whether there is somebody in the neighborhood somewhere who can be brought to help them support. Or maybe even bringing a caretaker on board to use the traditional local way of communication so that this person is well supported. And even though I don't want to be negative here, because I'm pretty sure most health workers are doing a lot of good work.
Indeed.
But you find that some people are unprofessional. When they're serving a person with impairment, they take as if they are doing some... Just
like it's a favor.
It's a favor, or maybe it's just something being done just for fun. Huh? You find, you know, every profession has ethical dynamics which should be considered. Even here in journalism, the ethical principles you have to uphold under all costs. Similarly...
Non-partisanship.
Non-partisanship. Similarly, in the health facilities, there is some element of consent somewhere for you to get some services. So, getting a consent, especially by a person with disability, may not be sought by some health worker. They just assume, for us, I think this one will be good for him or her. Huh? They believe to be understanding more than you yourself. That's why for us with NUDIPU, we are guided by a philosophy that nothing for us without us.
Nothing for us without us.
What does it mean? Allow me to digest this philosophy.
Go ahead.
This is a philosophy which is the bedrock for NUDIPU existence. This philosophy was arrived at through a numerous struggle, because I told you NUDIPU began in 1987.
Indeed.
So from 1987 up to today, there are a lot of roadblocks which NUDIPU is clearing to make persons with disability have a better environment for their survival.
Indeed.
So traditionally, people who are not disabled were at the forefront to decide issues about disability affairs.
Until you got involved.
No, you know, development is like, you have ever been in a hotel. Development is like when you go to a hotel, there's a menu. You go there and take what you think is good for you. But there were some people taking certain food for persons with disability, and they would bring before you and tell you, eat. You said you are hungry, so we have brought for you food here. You eat it. When you try to say, maybe I don't like this one, you say, have you seen now? These people are very complicated to deal with. Yet your approach, Aroni, is already biased from the beginning.
I love the analogy, Tony.
So our philosophy says nothing for us without us.
Yes, Tony.
This philosophy is trickled down in our day-to-day program design, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting.
All right, Tony, you know, there's another challenge when it comes to access to education, especially continued learning for our people grappling with various disabilities. How hard or easy has it been for them to continue their education during this pandemic? Yes,
you will agree with me that the answer may look obvious, but let me bring it into context. Learning for persons with disability during COVID-19 pandemic has been one of the biggest challenges, and we have been advocating about it as NUDIPU through a number of strategies. But most persons with disability dropped out almost permanently due to this COVID-19 pandemic. There are a lot of literature which are going on now. And if you try to disaggregate literature about persons with disability, especially in terms of access to education, very few percentage of them access education. And this access, if it is to be disaggregated from maybe gender or perspective, you find that girl child is far much below. For example, this project we are calling Gender and Disability Inclusion in Practice project. It's a 4-year project which has 4 core thematic areas.
Let's first focus on education. I'm going to get you on that. It's a very lengthy
on education, the challenges are many.
From a GBV perspective. Yes.
From a GBV perspective, access to education is difficult. Why? Because most persons with disability have suffered from psychological GBV, form of GBV.
All right.
You find that the attitude, the way you are humiliated, the way you are discriminated at the school settings. Maybe the school is not very conducive to you, and if you try to ask, no one is willing to come to you. A senior woman teacher in a typical primary school may not at times give a similar support to a girl with a disability compared to other girls.
We also do know that you need 60,000 Uganda shillings to get a sign language interpreter within the same class under conventional schooling, which is so expensive for them.
Okay, you know, this thing they call is expensive, but for me, it's expensive because we want it to be expensive. You know, when you are programmed right from the beginning, it's like building a house. You know, read that I need this, I need that, I need that. You align your budget properly, knowing that at the end of the day, I need this kind of structure to be like this. That is why we are saying for education to be very inclusive, there is going to be strategic intervention institutionally, a policy framework are there, but there's a need for extra mile movement to bring these services, like especially braille machine. Most primary schools don't have braille machine. Most primary schools don't have even physical basic accessibility in terms of ramps. Most primary schools even don't have even talking compounds to try to balance the boat between, balance the gap between the other pupils and the pupil with disability. You know, in most schools, these talking compounds you see has a lot of implication. Even some writing words with some messages. Those are what we call inclusive education, communication materials, which can try to bring this gap. Like, for example, I've told you here that our slogan and philosophy is that nothing for us without us. Now, why don't we, first of all, during our admission, we know already the nature of children with disability we are going to have in the school. And in most cases, we admit them because, let me put myself as a case study. For me, I was admitted in senior 5 in one of the schools because I was admitted on government. And then I was told by a teacher that my admission letter was ready. So I went, I collected the admission letter. Everything was perfect. On the day of reporting, I reported with everything. And then this, the institution woke up when I was supposed to now access the dormitory. The dormitory was far, the veranda was high. In other words, everything was not in my favor.
Indeed.
Now they told me, Tony, this is how we are going to manage your situation. We are going to first of all the board meeting. We shall table your issue before them, and then we shall give you back the results from the board. But the board has just had their meeting, so the next one is most likely to happen maybe after 6 months from now. But the term has already started. But then I said, having said that, I don't want to pull ropes with you, but I'm pretty sure you already saw me in totality when I came for my admission letter and everything.
Yes, I know.
And I was given this admission letter. I thought you had done your internal auditing, and you knew that I will be absorbed
so
easily.
PWDs in conventional schools are being discriminated against. Now, on the issue of continued learning within the home settings, because schools are largely closed, let's use the analogy of what is happening right now. We are getting information that some parents or families are discriminating against persons with disabilities. They would actually favor the non-disabled over those who are disabled within their family setting over continued learning. They'll be like, why should we actually give a laptop to this one who is disabled? Let's just give it to this one who is non-disabled, because they have better chances of pulling through and actually being more successful in that regard. Are you also getting information that families are discriminating against PWDs when it comes to continued learning, access to educational materials and so forth?
Thank you so much. I've learned about that families are discriminating about against persons with disability when it comes to access to education materials, and even other rights, not only the rights to education.
Food and so forth.
Food and so forth, medically and the like. Now, this one is coming from the traditional mindset that, you remember, traditionally, for a person with disability to just think about going to school was crafted to look as it is a crime. A person with disability was forced in a way to believe that thinking about going to a school, you should think it's a crime. So before you maybe express your need to go to a school, they want it to look as if you have done some very big mistake. Why? We did some baseline somewhere. In this community, we were told that most people in that community believe that sending a child with disability, especially a girl child, makes her become a prostitute. So they said, now, Tony, you imagine, for me to send a girl with a disability up to university, and then eventually she graduates and becomes a prostitute. This one is a double loss. First of all, I will have wasted my money. Secondly, this girl will go away, and then I will not benefit from it. Have you seen the mindset? This is, I'm trying to bring into context the mindset of the community where you are talking about inclusive education about.
Of course, this is also a form of GBV because you're making psychological distress.
That is a very serious form of GBV. That one is economic because we are denying somebody opportunity. Because we all know rights to education. We all know that when somebody goes to school, there's a very wide gap between somebody who has not gone to school. So these children with disability, also even the few who are trying to get the reading materials, these reading materials, most of them, especially by partners who are not disability aware or disability empowered, that bring some learning materials that are not friendly. For example, a person with a visual impairment, you should bring a learning material to him or her after knowing after doing some assessment to find out, does he need an ordinary print, a large print, or a braille? This is our languages in the disability movement. If you want your intervention to have a meaning in the life of somebody. And then two, even these parents, are you aware that most parents of children with disability, they don't know even what the concept of disability. You have a child with disability in your home, but you yourself, you don't know what is this disability.
Tony Ayina, he is the program officer at the National Union of Disabled Persons of Uganda. Well, we are talking about prevention and responses to the gender-based violence cases that are skyrocketing within our jurisdiction, especially against persons with disabilities. In our midst, we have the Honorable Samuel Helen Grace, the Minister of State for Disability Affairs. We want to talk about the responsibilities of the state in responding and preventing gender-based violence among members who are grappling with various disabilities. Well, a very good morning once again, Honorable Samuel Helen Grace. What are the responsibilities of the state in responding and preventing GBV cases among PWDs?
Yeah, I think I want to thank Ayena for what he has brought, and I think most of those things, if we say from 1987, we have moved. There's a change.
Positive strides.
Very positive, and the reason why he's very smart is because of that environment. Because I'm very sure he must have gone on the government sponsorship, even at university level, and become what he is today. So government is very responsive.
But many did not get that luxury that Tony is asking in.
It's not a luxury.
They didn't get a chance to get a government sponsorship.
It is not a luxury, it is a right. Because government, even in education, has put us slots and be able to get the young people with disabilities to get to education. I will agree with him because some of the schools were built before people really had attitude issues, and the use of attitude are more of individuals. If I walked here, Remeo, and you looked at me and said, oh my God, I suspect that is his wheelchair. And he said, now how is he getting here? You look confused yourself as a coordinator, you are the one moderating us, but because this person has come with wheelchair, you get confused. Because so you did not prepare to get this person. So the issue of attitude to me is about individuals. It's not everybody, whether in medical, whether in government or whatever. What government is doing, especially Ministry of Gender, under the National Development Plan, we have already been given an issue of mindset change. How do we change the mindset of people to look at other people in community? Because if you look at me and think that this girl with disability, I think if I take advantage of her, some people used to say that if you mess with a girl with disability, you don't get HIV, which is wrong. They are human beings.
Wrong.
They also get HIV/AIDS. But now for you, you sneak there, thinking that you are sneaking, you come out with HIV/AIDS. So it affects both of you. You realize that you have talked about the parents. I also don't want to think that I have evidence whether parents really deny their children this. I have seen parents who are really concentrating about supporting their children, especially people who have children with Down syndrome, people have children with mental challenges. You find a parent telling you, I had to leave a job to go and take care of my child. Whereas
a smaller percentage.
Yes, a small percentage, but we want to agree that we have moved from the 1987, because in 1987 there was even no constitution in Uganda by then. So by the time Uganda started putting in laws, accepting to sign the Convention on Rights of People with Disabilities, signing the Marrakesh Treaty, all this shows that there is government support.
He also talked about attitudinal challenges at the health centers, health workers actually being so discriminative against PWDs.
Remember the problem when people are serving disabled people, either they don't know what to do with us.
I see.
Because when you enter in, if I was sitting on that wheelchair and I was pregnant, they will first see a wheelchair, they don't see a Samo. They see a wheelchair, they don't see a woman who's pregnant.
They first see a problem.
So when they see the wheelchair, they see a problem and say, oh my God, what do we do? So what do? They'll refer you to Mulago. Maybe I'm coming from Impigi, they say, your case, go to Mulago. And
just
yet,
by looking at the wheelchair.
By looking at the wheelchair. And yet I could be some woman who can be able to deliver normally, but they get scared. So the issue of attitude can be, again, I go back to individuals. There are those who are good who can come and talk to you. But there are those who have attitude problems. As you said, somebody, as you enter, asks, hey, who was that stupid man who impregnated you? They abuse the man. They don't abuse you. They really abuse the other man who came.
Forgetting the lady was raped or defiled.
No, but they have a right to sex. The women have right to sex, but despite they are being disabled.
But many of the sexual abuse cases that have taken center stage during the pandemic were as a result of defilement or rape. They were being forced into these relationships.
They were forced but because of your attitude again as the defiler or the raper. Because the defiler or the raper. So that this one who is sitting always here, because she's crawling here, she's seated there, she looks innocent, I think I can get in there. So they did that. But the problem is, were they able to get justice? Me, I'm at the problem of justice where many of our people have not got justice. And I think the justice system should really up itself. Because when you start by going to police and they say, bring money for filling the form. Then when you get the form, move to the hospital. That is expensive. I think for me as a minister, that's where I see where there's a challenge. The expenses about, by the time you reach court, even the evidence could have got destroyed. And then
so should government absorb the funds or the money that you're going to be spending on maybe opening up a file and maybe going to court and so forth? Are you saying that government should actually be helping in this regard?
That's what I think, because that could be left out to government to manage, especially for affirmative action. Since government gives affirmative action, if it's a person with disability, let's try to waive off some of these things. And even the distance, I think already government is thinking of adding in the magistrates so that they become near. Because you have one magistrate managing over 6 districts. When will this person get justice? I'm still seated here with my evidence. Somebody comes as a relative, says, but you are going to be killed because you want to continue going to court.
Honorable Sama, that is a big failure on the government, because it seems like they let the victim become the investigator on their own. I come in reporting a case and then you send me to a medical center to actually go and get some tests done. Yet it's supposed to be the police itself doing investigations, which include medical tests.
Yeah, what I'm saying is what is happening.
I see.
The police will send you go and look for the tests yourself. And that's the expense I'm saying. If government can waive it off, then it can help our people. So I'm talking here both for side of government and also the side of the disabled. Remember, I'm a disabled. Yes. So I must be able to also tell you what happens in society.
Indeed.
So when this person is moving in all these expenses, they tend to lose out the case and then they die quietly. With the GBV, they get psychological torture, they are neglected, or they disappear from home and just say, let me try to find where to go.
Or give up on the case.
Give up the case. So the gender-based violence is critical. And I will agree, when Ayana was saying, people can even deny you food because you are disabled. You'll always be the last to eat. And because you are seated there, you are doing nothing, you have just come from the garden, your own family. And you find that those are issues that affect people in gender-based violence. But I think government, as I said earlier, has tried to come up with the laws. How do we make these laws implementable? And I want to call upon NUDIPU. Let's take advantage of these laws and be able to see that our issues of GBV is now a critical issue, are taken care of. Because GBV, I sometimes sympathize with men who are disabled and get women who are not disabled. Somebody, Ayana, she removes your wheelchair and that's the end of you. Having you, you know, you are left there hanging. And then you see what the community is doing and you say, but what is wrong? Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I also want to think that, as you talked about education, and I want to say government has come up with a policy. You know, under the UP policy, if there's a child with disability, it should be #1 to be registered.
I see.
And I would think that if this child is taken to school, our expectation that all other processes are put in place. And when we got the UPE policy, you realize that many schools that were being built used to put in a ramp. It could be a funny ramp, but there's a ramp, because some of them could be mountains. But advocacy is a continuous process.
I see.
And we kept talking to government, and government is trying to bring that. And that's why you see that in the university in Chambogo, there is a special university for special needs education, to try to bring out the issues of people like the interpreter there, how can help to talk to people who are deaf, people who are blind, how do we get people who can help them to move, brailing some of these documents, because brailing was never heard of. And right now, the Minister of Education, I think, has come up with an embosser, Minister of Education, when you are doing examinations for blind students, you are able to change the thing into a braille copy, and they are given more time when they are doing this examination. So for me, government of Uganda is trying its level best, but we, the ones who are disabled, should tell them what they should do for us. Sometimes people don't know what to do for us because we have not given them. So instead of lamenting, let us come up with proposals, solutions, and see this is how we think we can make it work better. According
to Honorable Helen Asama Grace's submission, you could largely tell that the reason as to why we are grappling with the skyrocketing case of GBV cases, Tony Aina, could be the bad reporting system, the unconducive environment that does not allow victims to actually come forward and report these cases. Wouldn't you agree? Because as we speak right now, there could be no sign language interpreter at a particular police station near us right now to handle any of the cases that might come through today.
Thank you so much, Romeo. GBV happen both in public and private spheres. It can happen at a household level, even when some people are locked up somewhere, GBV can happen there. Similarly, GBV can happen even in public offices. But now, the biggest problem is even the attitude of the survivor also matters. Because when your right is abused, you should know, when my right is abused, what should I do? And what form of justice am I demanding for?
But some you go report the first time, nothing will come about. Second time, nothing comes about, and that stops you the third time from even going.
Yeah. Maybe, Romeo, I want to tell Ayana that, you say it's the attitude of the person, but the truth is, most of us are poor. If you're a poor person, and the one who has done this is you are denied justice. Because at the end of the day, this person has been abused. You go and report. The first person even to stop you might be your parents, to say, why are you taking the big Romeo to...
It's going to be expensive.
This man is... No, let's negotiate it out. And usually they negotiate 100,000 because there's no kaunga. You are being made like you are in a market. So people begin negotiating over your abuse, and then they get 100,000, and we have seen these cases.
All right, Tony Aina, continue with the chain of thought and also talk about what she's mentioning, the mediation of court processes and whether or not it's exacerbating the problem.
The minister is absolutely right.
Indeed.
There was a testimony somewhere. This was, according to that community setting, a very reputable guy.
Yes, Tony.
And he happened to do a very nasty thing in terms of sexual violence against a girl with a disability. Then we started responding, and this was a guy who was threatening even police people, doing threats everywhere. But now we use multiple approaches. We brought several stakeholders. Even the media were brought on board.
Indeed.
To expose this guy as much as possible. And then gradually the guy began losing momentum, he began losing weight, and he began listening to people. Yeah. So the idea I'm trying to bring here is that GBV response needs multiple partners at different levels. At strategic level, at the local level, and even the survivor alone should be focused and consistent. Because we have had instances, you have heard of additional statement in the police. Indeed. A GBV case has been reported the following day. We have brought additional statement. We want to go and handle this thing at home. But for whose interest is this additional statement brought? Always is the other party, but not the survivor. Because a survivor does not need money or food, needs justice. And justice at times is defined according to the survivor. Maybe you want to mediate upon this, but this is a criminal case, and the survivor wants this person to be in prison for some period of time. I see. And remember, this GBV we are talking about is very dynamic. It varies from an individual to an individual. When you commit a GBV against a person with disability, the nature of disability also aggravate or may worsen the situation in a way, because some of those things are due. GBV is largely due to power imbalance. You know, most persons with disability don't have enough power in terms of resources, knowledge, better social networks. They don't have somebody whom they can seek even better advice or refer something in case of any disaster. So in that scenario, it calls for a concerted effort. That's why, for us, we were training justice, law, and other sector officials on how to support persons with disability. And in this project, we are calling Gender and Disability Inclusion in Practice project. We are bringing justice. We are deliberately going to support 10 cases in the court of law.
Amazing.
Cases.
Pro bono cases.
Pro bono cases. We are going to support 60 cases of GBV, which are not criminal in nature, through alternative dispute resolution. We are going to support the logistical arrangement of a survivor of GBV cases in the GBV survivor shelter in
Okay, you're largely giving us recommendations on what NUDIPU is doing to alleviate the suffering of the PWDs, and that is going to take us into another conversation. But largely, we are still on the reporting system, the unfavorable environment. Now, let's look at police and the judicial system. Do you think the police and the judicial system are as culpable when it comes to this vice skyrocketing among our communities? What do I mean? When we report a case to the police and then they decide, no, go ahead and mediate outside the coffers of police with the perpetrator and see how you can resolve this. When it luckily gets, the case gets to the judicial system, in the courts of law, you have the judge who is saying, I need evidence. I need the victim to present their genital parts in the courts of law. Can even that be possible? Also, they are also calling for mediation outside courts of law. So in a nutshell, is the police and the judicial system aiding and abating this vice, leading to its increase in our communities? Because the perpetrator will be free to actually go ahead and violate other people within the community.
Thank you so much, Romeo. GBV is not generic. How to report a GBV case maybe in Kampala City is different to how to report a GBV case maybe in rural settings. For example, how to respond to a GBV case in Karamoja, where this project we are implementing in, is very unique. It needs multiple partners, police, other community stakeholders, and also a very protracted follow-up strategy. Which
is the police and judiciary to blame? Let's not dilly-dally this issue.
No, you know, I've been interacting with them on case by case.
Yes, Tony.
Those judicial officers. I used to think that these people are fully equipped to handle this animal called GBV.
Indeed.
But when I brought them on board, we discussed, and we found a lot of gaps.
I see. What kind of gaps?
Respond alone in terms of logistic, airtime, fuel, better car, because in some community you cannot respond to a GBV on a motorcycle.
So they didn't have the basics.
They don't have the basics, and then too the road networks within the community, and then the security situation, which is ever unpredictable.
I see.
You have to pass through those unpredictable environment to go and rescue this survivor of GBV, and then too also from there you have to know that you are going to get a very serious form of resistance on the crime scene.
I see.
So all this.
What kind of resistance at the crime scene?
A perpetrator is also knowledgeable, and also want to protect his or her right at whatever cost, and he will do whatever it takes to protect him. Let me tell you, somebody who abuses people's right know the value of right more than the
So they
survivor.
know the law better, that they are violating.
They know
the loopholes within the law.
Because I remember one of our partners that shared us a story about, I would like to also concur with what Minister said. There was a case we were following somewhere with partners, and in that community, there was a man who was battered by a lady. And this lady, after learning about police response, she took off for 2 months without coming back home. And she was very unsettled. Not until some few time back when the police were consistently supported to make a follow-up. And the follow-up of a GBV case is very unique. You should be standby, because you may get a report that the other perpetrator is again threatening. So you should be standby to go. Don't say maybe I will come in the evening or tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, GBV, we should understand it is an issue of death and life.
All right, Tony Ayina, talk to us about the Gender and Disability Inclusive in Practice project and some of the other interventions you've birthed as NUDIPU to help people with disabilities during this COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you so much. Gender and Disability Inclusion in Practice Project, we normally call it GADIP. We have abbreviated it like that. It's a 4-year gender project being supported by Austrian Development Corporation and another organization we call Bread for Life. And it's being specifically implemented in Uganda in the 2 districts of Kotido and Moroto. And it has 4 thematic areas which is going to handle. The first one is development of the capacity of partners, which police and other people are included, and district union people. Support inclusive education, that's the second thematic area. The third one is economic empowerment, and the fourth one is GBV prevention, with a special deliberate attention to women and girls with disabilities. This one was not arrived at accidentally. It was due to several survey literature review, which showed that although in this country the level of poverty has been declining, in Karamoja is again different. UBO's report of 2016 says poverty has reduced from 50% to 21.4%. In this country.
And biggest concentration is in the north.
But in Karamoja, it's still standing at 60%. And most persons with disability in Karamoja have a meal, 1 meal a day, or they don't have even a meal. This one may not make meaning to you, like Romeo. You may not understand this.
I do,
but that is the reality there.
I do, because I recently left Munyonyo to go to Nansana municipality, and the carnage I've seen, yes, some people do not go to bed without a single meal. Yes.
And now, there's a very strong relationship between poverty and GBV.
Indeed.
And disability.
Yeah.
That is why this project is called Gender and Disability Inclusion in Practice.
Indeed.
There were several partners who were trying to bridge this gap. But how practical were they?
Also talk to us about the pro bono cases that you're willing to take on. I interrupted you when you were actually starting to give us the chain of thought.
The pro bono services were largely due to the inaccessibility of the tempo of justice by persons with disability. We found that most persons with disability, actually, they are very knowledgeable. They know what they want. But they just need a big push to be supported towards the direction of what they want. And now, there, we are supporting response in terms of rescuing that survivor, first of all. Supporting legal filing fees and supporting lawyers to go and support such a survivor in the court of law. Because we have found that some of these cases, unrealistic behavior become a norm if it is not being handled legally. And now, as I speak, when we did the baseline, it was amazing. We got only 5% reporting of GBV cases against persons with disability. But as I speak now, it's beyond 25, based on what we are doing. Because the gap was wide. Why? Because they already surrendered to the dire situation. And then, two, we are supporting alternative dispute resolution.
All right.
We actually, in our intervention, we value and appreciate the value of social fiber. We don't want to tamper with it.
Indeed.
We want it to be intact and even to move from good to better. Because in our intervention, we are bringing all the relevant stakeholders, religious leaders, cultural leaders, district technical staff, police, judicial officials like resident state attorneys, chief magistrate, and the like.
Indeed.
Because we want, at the end of the day,
the vocal and very charismatic Tony Aina. He is the program officer at NUDIPU, National Union of People, National Union of Disabled People of Uganda. Well, let's also bring in the Honorable State Minister for Disability Affairs, that is Helen Grace Asamo. Let's talk about what recommendations we could actually birth courtesy of government to curb the skyrocketing cases of GBV moving forward.
Yeah, I think on the side of government, of course, we work with partners like NUDIPU. One of them is creating awareness, both to the community, to the public, about issues of GBV and the effects of GBV to the different people. And then also, I think government is planning to take over the shelters of GBV so that they can be able to give counseling services and trying to place these people back to the communities. Because currently, if you have been a victim of GBV, you go to police, you are not attended to, you are going back to the same home or the same environment. So you find yourself entangled into that kind of confusion. We are also going to improve on the legal framework to ensure that it is implemented. And I think by improving the justice, the justice sector, so that justice, let's say if it is delayed, is denied, so that we can improve the systems in place. He has just given you the issue of transport. Somebody is still telling you, I don't have fuel. I am a poor person who has been attacked. Then you're asking me to pay for fuel. You're asking me for airtime and all this. If it happens, because I had it from Ayana, and I want to think that if it happens like that, then I think people with disabilities will never get justice.
And finally.
And then the other one is the putting in an environment that people with disabilities can be listened to, like in the justice sector. If they go to court, do we have interpreters in place to, if it's a deaf person? How do we handle people with intellectual disabilities? These are all the strategies that we need to come up as government to see that they can be affected. And I'll be happy to see their report of the status of how many of these disabled people have been put on place so that they can be brought on board. Because sometimes the cases of disabled people are not heard. You only hear about GBV on the other population. But how do we get these disabled people? Where are they? And how can we help them as government to ensure that they get justice against the issues of GBV? And I think that is the little that government can do, and we shall continue looking for avenues of economic empowerment, issues of education, to ensure that our people are enlightened. Thank you so much.
And with that, we've come to the end of this conversation. My name is Romeo Busiku. Special thanks to Honorable Helen Grace Asamo, the Minister of State for Disability Affairs, and also Tony Ayina, the Program Officer at the National Union of Disabled Persons of Uganda. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for having made the time to interact with us.
Thank you.
And indeed, it's now approaching midday. My name is Romeo Busiku. I'll be back at around 1 p.m. to interact with you on NTV at 1. Have yourselves a blessed day for now.